Now, often when people see me breaking down something or going against a conventional corporate media consensus narrative, they mistakenly believe that what I'm attempting to do is to try to convert somebody to my way of thinking, or to try to illuminate somebody to see things with a more rational, informed perspective. I assure you, I'm not doing either of those things. I know it looks that way, and in fact, the theatrical presentation of what I do appears to be that very thing, but I'm telling you right now, that's not what I'm doing. And there's a reason for that. You actually can't convince a gibblehead to go against a corporate consensus reality, no matter how absurd it is, no matter how much evidence you have to show them. If CNN says the sky is red, and you have a peer-reviewed scientific published research chromatography study illustrating without any shadow of a doubt that the sky is blue, they will take the red narrative over the blue one. Every time. That's what a gibblehead does. They're not interested in science and rationality and evidence. They do like to say they follow the science, but what they really mean is they follow whatever the television and the man on the television tells them the science is. They have zero interest in science, in rationality, in debate, in objective observation of empirical, measurable facts. Their primary genetically programmed agenda is to conform to the will of the mob, no matter how monstrous and horrendous that will may be. And at various points throughout history, that will is invariably monstrous and horrendous, hence killing Jews, hence burning witches, and so on and so forth. Hence rounding up unvaccinated people and putting them in concentration camps, which we just went through. So make no mistake, I'm not doing this to convert anybody, to illuminate anybody. Even if I say I'm doing it to illuminate the Gibbles, I assure you that's purely theatrical. There's no substance to my proclamations when I utter such a phrase. I'm doing it for me, for my self-expression, for the very same impulse not to compare myself to George Orwell. I'm not that arrogant. I am an arrogant human being, no question about it, but I'm not that arrogant to compare myself to one of the great literary geniuses of the English language. But George Orwell, listen, I want everyone, let's do this as a project together, as friends. Let's reread 1984. I know they made us read it in high school, and I know it's quoted endlessly and so on and so forth, but I'm telling you, it's one of the most misunderstood pieces of work in the English language, okay? Orwell wrote that book. First of all, he wrote it in 1948, shortly before he died. And the 1984 is simply an inversion of 1948. Orwell wasn't predicting the future. He wasn't trying to predict the future. He was satirizing his present. For instance, he'd just come out of World War II and the propaganda was changing. All of a sudden, where the Germans were once the enemies and the Russians were the good guys, in 1948, all of a sudden, the Germans were the good guys and the Russians were the enemies. Hence the phrase, "We've always been at war with Eurasia." And all through the novel, there's these contradictory propaganda talking points relying on the self-imposed political amnesia of the population to conveniently forget things that they were told just a week previously. This wasn't Orwell predicting our present reality, which is very much characterized by that very phenomenon. This was happening in Orwell's time. He wrote 1984 as a display of exasperation, extreme exasperation, from the perspective of a highly acutely intelligent, observant individual who saw these things happening in his time. So that's what I'm doing. I'm essentially like Winston Smith, huddled, and I'm literally in the corner of my apartment, by the way, with the telescreens turned off. I'm like Winston Smith, huddled in the corner of my apartment, away from the telescreen, scribbling thought crimes into my diary. That's what this is. If anyone wants to listen to it, great. Whether you agree with me or you hate listening to me because I'm going against consensus talking points, and I know how much that upsets many of you fucking little gibbleheads out there. I don't care. This is my show, and I'm doing it for me. If no one's listening, that's fine. It serves its purpose. It's a form of self-expression for me, as a way for me to vent, as a way for me to cling to my sanity, very much like Winston Smith does in 1984, who you have to understand was a cipher for George Orwell himself, who felt equally as existentially exasperated with the times that he lived through, where the intelligentsia, where the liberal class were complicit in displays of propaganda that beggared belief. 75 years later, nothing has changed.